Julie Meegan, welcome to your own show.
Thanks for having me. I know I was a hard guest to get, so I appreciate you tracking me down.
Right, in the interest of, actually though, seriously, in the interest of trying to continue the conversation outside the scope of the sort of tight interviews that you have with active professionals, and instead kind of turning the microphone on you and thinking about or talking with you to get an idea of how you think about these various marketing issues. And then sort of to kick back and forth the way we talk about these issues. And I think about them from a sales perspective. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I think that everybody can be or fall prey to is the silver bullet theory, the magical fairy dust, whatever you want to call it. And it goes a little bit like this. It's kind of like, if I get this thing, then it's going to solve all my problems. Right. Mm. So in this particular instance, you and I were talking outside the scope of this whole thing, and you were mentioning someone coming to you to evaluate a sponsorship deal that they had that was somewhere around $20,000. And we were talking it through, and I thought, this is a perfect opportunity to sort of look behind the scenes and in a non-scripted, non-interview style, just a casual style, sort of take apart an issue that people have to wrestle with every day. And that's sponsorships, but in the guise of the context of the silver bullet or magical fairy dust theory. And I think there's a lot of that out there, that because it gets sold to people when people are looking at purchasing a sponsorship. I know from my end, I've been on ends where people have been selling me sponsorships, and people have asked me to, vis-a-vis an organization, go to members and solicit purchase of sponsorship. So I have been asked to sell sponsorship, or maybe not sell it, but
promote it,
gently promote it and encourage it, shall we say? and then I've also been on the other receiving end of the sales pitch.
And I think just to put context around it, you are a business owner, and as part of that, we're also a salesperson. So you're a professional who's selling, and a business owner. And
so when I was approached by a salesperson, or it wasn't really a salesperson, but it's a person working for, say, an association, and they're saying, hey, if you get this sponsorship, the gold level, now if you get the silver level, well, this is it. They forgot about the dirt level.
Yeah, don't forget platinum, baby.
The dirt level is the one I wanted, really, which was the basic bank.
My budget allows for dirt.
My budget allows for dirt, which is free over here. But there's the dirt level, which is never available for some odd reason. And then there's all the other levels, which is like the standard. And then there's gold, and then there's platinum, and it keeps going. And when you get sold this stuff, you're kind of like you create a vision in your head on the buyer's end. And we'll get to our example in a minute, but I'm just going to talk about it from my experience. You create a vision in your head and you're like, this is the silver bullet. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so I get my name up there. I get the company name up there. And then when I go there, people are going to be like, is that you? Is that your company? Oh yeah. Well, that's my company, of course. And that's what we did. And that's what we are, and blah, blah, blah. And people are going to be like, ooh, ah. And then you're thinking to yourself, it's going to be a great conversation starter, and a great sort of conversation continuer, if you will. And that's going to lead to relationships, and relationships equal sales, and boom, paid for. And I kind of constructed that all around a basic lack of wanting to press the flesh and do what's necessary to augment your investment in the sponsorship. So what I'm saying is, as a buyer of those things, I looked at it more like the silver bullet thing, and I was like, oh, well, this is going to solve all my problems, and I still won't have to do all that legwork, the shoe leather. I still won't have to do all that because this is going to give me my entree. This is going to keep me continuing the conversation. This is going to do so much for me. And in reality, I was only kidding myself, right? Because sponsorship doesn't do that.
No, it doesn't. I mean, I think you hit on an important point. When you're looking at sponsorships, there's really two components to it. And it does depend on the sponsorship, but we'll use sponsoring an event as an example. There's what's part of this sponsorship, and I'm going to talk more about that in a second. And then there's the people side of it. Like, how are you going to bring the people from your organization to this event to complement your sponsorship? Because if they see your name up on the screen, or they saw your name in the email blast, well, now they need to see somebody and talk to them.
Your name's on the place setting with the
or the napkins. That's the best, as they crumple it up and throw it.
Right, or blow their nose in it.
But I guess broadly speaking, sponsorships.
So there's the two parts.
There's two parts. I mean, there's the benefits that you're going to get, and then. And when I say benefits, let me just take a step back. Let's talk at 100,000-foot level, because you can't even think about benefits before you ask yourself the big question of, well, how does this sponsorship help us further our growth efforts?
Right.
Really, because that's what marketing and sales are about, right? I mean, we're here to help grow the business, whether that's bringing in new customers or clients or retaining existing. So when just to take that apart, if you are looking from an analytical standpoint, if you are looking to leverage the sponsorship to bring new clients in, the theory is there are going to be people who work at companies who attend this event, whether it's virtual or in person, or in that instance, they're going to see your name and you're going to be able to start or spark a conversation. If you walk up to them cold, "Hi, how you doing? My name's Joe, and I'm with so-and-so." I mean, it doesn't really, it's not it's not the silver bullet that just because you sponsor something, one of the attendees is going to talk to you.
Want to talk to you, want to approach you, and want to say, "Hey, did you sponsor that event? Oh my goodness, I see your name.
Were that easy.
I see your name up there, and I would love to do business with you. Can we talk in the morning about a contract?" That's not going to happen. And then the other portion is the sort of brand recognition, building the memory in people's. Now that's more likely to happen.
It can,
because people are going to walk by the banner or the whatever, and they're going to see your name and they're going to go, there we go. Solid choice. I made a solid choice. I'm with them. I made a solid choice.
Or I've heard of them. And then, they also are receiving emails from you, or
other
they're
marketing
doing advertising,
stuff,
or they're bumping into your people elsewhere, and they're connecting it all. So, but that kind of goes back to
that case, it does help.
It can help. It can help bring your company. It can build awareness for your company.
Right. And it doesn't take as much legwork as the first example, because it depends on what you're thinking about using it for. In this example, just reinforcing your existing marketing efforts, we'll call it for lack of a better phrase, it's fine. You don't have to do a ton unless you want to do more, but you're going to have people at the event to support it. But it's not as extreme as the previous example, which is if you're looking to get new customers vis-a-vis this sponsorship investment, you're going to have a pretty intense plan, no?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's the part that falls short oftentimes is we may decide that, yes, strategically, this sponsorship makes sense. It's aligned. I know you're not a fan of that word, but it's
I know
it's aligned with the market that we're going after, or the industry that we're trying to reach. So I think that's part of the questioning that you start with is, how is this sponsorship aligned with our strategy, either from a business perspective or maybe from a community perspective? I mean, as organizations, we want to support the communities that we're in. So I think that factors into...
So supporting, just so we're clear, by supporting the community, you're building goodwill. And the theory is, by building goodwill, people are going to remember you when it comes time, when they have a problem that your company can solve. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
In essence. That's a general.
You may have employees that are volunteering their time at some of these, we'll call them nonprofit organizations, or on the philanthropic side of things.
Right.
So
again, building goodwill.
Yes. So I think is it tied to your business strategy? Is it tied to some philanthropic efforts? Or is it tied, a sponsorship, to a customer or a vendor?
And I think the key here to remember is that you're building relationships vis-a-vis the sponsorship. So the idea is that, like you're saying, they're volunteering or they're engaged in a nonprofit, but they're also sponsoring it. You're building relationships. Well, we know we can count on you, Jack, because every year your company has been sponsoring our keynote event or whatever it is. And we know we can count on you. And then all of a sudden it's kind of like there's sort of an unspoken, like, well, you've been counting on us for the last 5 years, yet you've never even entertained a conversation with us about my company helping you out. Can we do something here? Right? So sponsorships also take an element of patience.
They
and
do.
I think that that's the other thing that I wanted to talk about under the guise of the silver bullet and the fairy dust. Sponsorships are not a direct hit.
Definitely not a direct hit. You really have to think about, what are we going to do to further this sponsorship?
And this goes back to you supporting. So I didn't want to steal your thunder. You said you've got to have the support there. It's about your people.
People support.
You divided
Well,
it
here,
into
we'll
two.
use an example
Sure.
with, let's say you're going to sponsor, and this would be a sponsorship that's tied to your business, your growth strategy.
Right.
So you're going to support a local chamber of commerce.
Okay.
And you've got,
And the reason that you're doing that, let's be honest here. I mean, in part, you want to do good things, but
you're doing it to grow your business.
Okay, so you're doing it to grow your business. Okay. I just want to be clear here because we skip over a lot of things, especially when we're talking with experienced people. The theory is that there are going to be people in the chamber who are business owners.
That could be potential customers.
That could be potential customers. And they're going to see your name prominently displayed at some significant
or on their
event
website, or regardless.
something significant where these people cross paths. They go through the train station or the bus station of the Chamber of Commerce once a week, once a month.
Yeah, through their website or through.
And they see that and they'll see, that's a name I recognize. And then the theory goes, I get the name now.
Oh, and I have met Mary at local chamber events.
Right.
Or I saw her speak at the last monthly breakfast
She
meeting.
seems knowledgeable.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, that's where you're bringing...
i.e., I might want to use her or her company.
Yeah, starting with, now I'm aware of her company. They
Right.
seem credible. When there's a need, I'll keep them in mind. But then that's Mary's job to keep that connection going with this
So the
person.
sponsorship, again, is not the silver bullet.
No.
It's not the magical fairy dust.
To me, it's partly a way to bring your brand into the market in a different way. It's just coming through a different channel.
Right.
You're not sending emails or doing webcasts or holding events. You are going through a third party that can elevate your brand, give your brand a little bit more credibility, but it also can allow you to bring your brand to contacts, people that you might not otherwise be able to get to.
So let's say you sponsored an event. Is it good enough to just sponsor the event and to attend? Or is it really a matter of, we're going to sponsor the event, we're going to attend, and we're going to orchestrate a kind of a plan where we have a number of people and a number of activities. So what would that look like?
Well, if you were sponsoring an event, you would want to have, let's say this is pretty common, you're going to sponsor their event, you get a table for 10, and you want to make sure that you've got some of your A players attending the event.
A player mean they're able to conduct a conversation. They're not afraid to start a conversation. They're not going to hang around the booze bar, and they're not going to be eating, and they're not going to be going to the bathroom the entire time.
Yes, that's right.
And
they're not going to be huddled talking together.
And they're not going to stick with the same person
Right.
for the next 2.5 hours.
Right.
They're going to work the room.
Exactly.
Or at least your table.
Right.
Okay.
And then you make some, good decisions about, who should we fill this table with? We want to have 3 people from our company. We want to have a couple of clients. We'll invite, this key prospect.
And you also have to think about competitors. Are you really, you got to be careful, right? Because you don't want to have, there's a mix. And if it's like, oh, those guys manufacture and the same thing we do, what are they doing here at the same time?
I think you're right. You want to be
Right.
thoughtful of, okay, who are we inviting?
But then you also have to consider like, well, if you're inviting existing clients, and let's say another client gets invited and he sees that they're at your table and they're like, wait a second, how come we didn't get invited to their table?
Yeah, I suppose there could be some of that.
But anyway, so there's a plan.
So there's a plan for who you want to be attending from your side, who you want to be inviting in terms of clients or customers and prospects. And then how are you going to kind of work the room? You want to get the registration list in advance, review it, have some idea on who's going to try and connect with who. Now, this is the perfect world. Does this happen? Well, sometimes this doesn't even happen probably 25% of the time, but it's a great idea.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I have to tell you, I was a small business. I can tell you that getting that advanced registration list was really important because if you're in the business, you can scan the list. You can figure out people you want to possibly connect with, your wish list, people you need to connect with, maybe they're customers or they're really close to being customers. And then there's people you want to avoid. And then there's people, right? Totally. And there's,
so now you're all over it, which is great. And I think that's part of the decision criteria where marketing can have some influence in working with, the decision makers within your company. Is like, okay, well, who are we going to work with inside here? Which business leader is going to really take the lead on this and champion it? And if we don't have somebody that's going to do that, then we really shouldn't be doing the sponsorship because it's not going to make sense. If we can't work it while we're there, and if we're not going to do follow up with some of the contacts that we make there after the event, well, then it's not worth doing that particular sponsorship.
And this is where, and we'll talk about this in the future in other conversations, but marketing and sales having a more of a simpatico relationship and not just going off the reservation, because
working together, talking it through.
Yeah, because the thing is, marketing's working at these initiatives where they're getting the word out in various ways and various programs and various whatever you have. And sales, you've been targeting certain lists of people. So then if there's at all possible a way to target the people that have received the most recent communications, those people should be a top priority for your people that are attending the event or being part of the sponsorship. They're going to connect with people. Those people that you've been recently communicating with should be the top priority because they're the people that have received your messaging outside the sponsorship most recently. And because of that, if you include that messaging plus the sponsorship messaging, now we're talking. From a sales perspective, it's a much warmer type of reception when you talk with people, because even if you don't know people, let's say they're what we think about as like those level 2s where they've received information, but they haven't really met, they haven't met you. They're not ready for, the whole thing. It's still a mystery. Well, those people you want to start talking to right away because they've received the most recent communication, they're primed, and you've got the sponsorship now at the event. So from a sales perspective, you're walking up and it's a lot more of an obstacle to initiate a conversation because it becomes a name recognition thing. Like it's Claude from so-and-so.
I think it's the name recognition part that you get the benefit of. I don't think people should walk away from our conversation today thinking that just because you do a sponsorship, half the time I feel like unless you've got a real prominent sponsorship, they may not even see your logo, know? So it's like, again, the logo doesn't cut it, but it's in combination, and really it's the visibility you get through the promotion that the organization is doing, emails, advertising,
so we've
signage,
got this upcoming event.
But it's your people.
Yeah.
It's the two, and then having a game plan with your people for the actual event.
Right, which busts the whole theory of it's a silver bullet. Because
there are
not
no
a silver bullet.
It just complements other marketing programs that you've got in place, which is why, look, every company typically has to really watch their marketing dollars. And so on the sponsorship front, you need to do the same thing.
And so in the spirit of watching the dollars, so you had a situation where they came to you and they said, hey, what do you think of this sponsorship? Obviously, this is anonymous or whatever, but they said, what do you think of this sponsorship? And you took a look, and what's one of the things that you sort of noticed or reflected
the
on?
sponsorship from a strategy perspective made sense. It was the right audience. It was us getting in front of companies that had been trying to get in front of in a different way. We had people on the business side that were going to really activate around it. And what I mean is they're going to be like at the event, reaching out and introducing themselves, doing the follow-up. And so that all felt great. In this particular case, marketing was brought in towards the very end. And that was my only
and because
criticism of the process was that it would be much better to have us brought in earlier, because we're not going to commit. We can't commit to large dollars without having really vet it through. Mm-hmm. And in this case, we get the contract. The contract doesn't reflect what the sponsorship had been described as. And so now marketing's involved, and we just have to slow down the process a little bit, slow it down and make sure, we're talking to the publication and we can understand what is involved, what benefits we really get. And marketing, we're going to look at it a little bit differently than the business might. And we also have the benefit of having done lots of other sponsorships. So we could say, oh yeah, you know what? Let me think about that. When we did the sponsorship with the chamber or the banking association, they had a cool benefit. Let me pull that up and throw that out to this publication and see if we can negotiate that into the sponsorship package. So there are some real benefits. I chuckle.
So in some ways, you got to be the parent. The kids walked into the car dealership and is like, "Mom, you got to understand, this is the best car ever. This is going to be awesome. He's giving me a real deal, and he said that we're going to get the car.
And we have to decide, Mom.
Yeah.
He's got a hot one on the line, Mom. If we don't make this decision like right now,
he's going to sell it to somebody else.
Right.
We're going to lose it, and that's going to be it. And the car, I could take the car. I could deliver the car this afternoon. I could get it, and I could be driving. And that would save everybody a lot of time.
So Mom comes in and is like, "Honey, hold on,
and the sales guy's like, oh no.
Oh yeah, I know. And in this case too, the sales rep was very nice, but was like, "What? I thought this was done. I thought we were signing." And I'm like,
right.
We're not saying no. We just want to understand it. That's all.
Right.
So,
he's probably like, unbelievable. Now I got to deal with this. They're smart
and
about
look,
it.
I think that's the reality of business. Look, it would be great to have. Ideally, you want to have marketing involved in these conversations or really leading the conversations, but it's not always going to work like that. But I think we all bring different perspectives. Marketing is going to have a different perspective. People in the business are going to have a different perspective. And if we're talking and working together, I think we're going to get to a better place.
Yeah,
That's really my message.
And then the other thing is that there's times, and obviously you don't have to give away the farm here, but there's times when you basically advise against it, and you say, you know what, it's not the right.
Well, my question is, how does this help us further our growth efforts?
Right.
Sometimes we'll get a request for a sponsorship and it's not even getting us in front of the right audience, or maybe the right audience is only a small percentage of the audience.
Yeah.
And so in that case, I'm like, well, we could get in front of that 10% in a different way.
It's almost like you're doing some sort of economic equation here.
There is an economic equation.
Oh, interesting.
Well,
So, I mean, you're obviously sitting here saying we're paying X number of dollars for this.
Yeah.
Is there a way?
Could we spend, $20,000 or $10,000 and get in front of these people in a different way, in an easier way, in a more effective way? And so those are the questions that'll go through my mind. And then, when you've got sponsorships that come up that were not in the budget, and this is just the reality, it happens all the time. Of course, you're going to have requests that come up throughout the year because the world is dynamic.
I know from being a business owner, you'll get the call or the email out of the blue, which is like, hey, we are the largest premier organization in the country. I know who you are. And there's an opportunity right now. We just had one of the major sponsors back out.
Yeah.
They just bowed out. And what we've done, though, is we realize that those are expensive sponsorship opportunities. So what we've done is we've created a special variation of that, which is really a bargain. We've never done this before. It's going to be unlike anything you've ever seen. And you're like, really? What is it? And they're like, well, you're going to get your name here and your name is here. You're going to be announced here, and it's going to happen at this time and this time and this time. Plus, as a benefit, it's almost like those 2 a.m. commercials, but it won't stop there.
Right.
We're going to give you, and you're listening to this and you're like, you've got, again, the silver bullet in your head. You're like, God, I'm besieged with all this stuff. I got all this work to do and all this other stuff. Boy, if that could lead to one sale, that would be tremendous. And then all of a sudden, you've got this silver bullet syndrome in your head, and you're like, oh, this could be the answer. And he's not gonna, and then they drop it. They go, listen, all it takes is one sale.
Oh, that's right. My favorite. Which, okay, is true, but the reality that you're going to get that one sale, I mean, I hate to be a naysayer. I think the other thing to do when you're looking at assessing sponsorships is to really look at the strengths within your organization in terms of like what you are good at from a marketing perspective. Do you have a lot of thought leadership, articles, white papers, things that you could negotiate into a contract to get distributed to their members, or
that's a good one,
in
yeah.
a newsletter, or advertising.
Tell
or something
you what, so it goes something like this. I'll tell you what, I'll sign on for the 20K sponsorship in this event, but I would like to be featured in your quarterly newsletter, or I'd like to be featured on your website. I'd like to have my articles uploaded to your website, and I'd like to be sort of a featured contributor or whatever.
Something like along those lines, right? So if you've got that talent or capability, that's one thing to think at. Maybe your people are good at speaking. And if that's the case, I mean, I can think of one professional I worked with who said, I don't even want to consider a sponsorship unless I'm holding a microphone.
Oh, yeah.
So, they want to be on the podium in front of the room, and, not
So in order to sell that high level sponsorship, the organization might jump through a few hoops.
Well, that's got to be part of it, that when we, structure the sponsorship, we've got our people presenting, introducing, speaking, moderating, moderating panels.
So you put a face with the name,
which is one of the best ways to do it. But it kind of goes back to your organization and the strengths that you have within your organization. Some don't have folks that you want to put in front of a crowd, even though I'm not sure how you're growing if you don't have some of that capability. So, I mean, there's just different things that you have to kind of think about. I would say that when you get the outline of the sponsorship, don't be afraid.
Look before you leap.
Right. And don't be afraid to question it and say, you know what? You could propose ideas.
Right. And don't be afraid to say, listen, we need some time to mull it over. And if they say to you, okay, but there's 3 other people that are also looking at this, just want to warn you.
You know what? You just tell them, look, we are very interested, but we need to talk it over internally. Every organization gets that.
Yeah.
So,
I think it's really important to reflect back on that, because so many times I'll speak from my experience. So many times, you are looking for easier paths to start conversations, easier paths to develop relationships, easier paths to get that much closer to a contract or the sale or whatever. And the ultimate fact is that it's not really an easy path.
No, it's just a different path. And I guess that's another.
This will help you along the path. A sponsorship can help you along the path. Like, it's almost like the water bottle in your long walk. It'll help you refuel you, but it's not going to make you do the walk. You still have to do the walk. You still have to do the walk.
And so I think the other question to ask the person who's bringing this sponsorship to you. So let's say you're a marketer and a professional within your organization is bringing it to you. At some point, money doesn't grow on trees. You got to say, well, what are we going to give up in our marketing plan or budget this year in order to make room for this?
Here's the answer. It's usually you get nothing.
Well, and if that's the case, then I'd say, well, I guess, the sponsorship isn't that important. Or you just have to help think through it. And quite honestly, with sponsorships, and I'm sure any marketer who's listening right now that has been doing this a little bit knows that they are probably plowing money into what I'll fondly call the winky dink sponsorship. So it's the small $200, $500, dollar sponsorship.
But they all add up.
They all add up.
Yeah.
And so one strategy is to just take a close look at all of the small sponsorships.
The sponsorship shotgun.
It doesn't mean those organizations aren't important. So,
Right.
but you have to really, because there's limited dollars, you need to take a look at them and say, well, you know what? If we stopped doing these 10
Right.
small sponsorships that really aren't benefiting us,
Right.
we could take that money and put it into this bigger one with a better organization, gives us more visibility, and
some of those sponsorships were probably, you got to be careful. You got to pick through each one. Some of them were they were easies. People were like, yeah, I'll give you $200 for that. I'll give you $500 for that. No big deal as a business. But then you also have to look at, and those you could probably cut. But there's also instances where you have ongoing relationships with people. I mean, I remember you telling me, relating a story. I think it was a local baseball team or whatever it was, but it was a client, or somebody significant, a customer. And it was like that customer's kid is on the baseball team. And it's like,
that goes back to the very beginning of our conversation.
We're not pulling that.
Well, right. So you have to, when the sponsorship request comes in, you really have to look at it through the lens of how does this help support our business growth, us being, good stewards of being a member of the business community, so philanthropic stuff, but then clients and vendors. Those requests are going to come in, and that's a part tied to client retention. So you have to really ask where it's coming from, because it'll help you know which path to go down in assessing it.
This is awesome. I'm really glad we talked about this, because I think it sort of dispels some of the myth that exists out there about sponsorship, and it can help not just marketers, but I think it can help salespeople, but more importantly, business owners,
particularly small business owners who are probably barraged with different sponsorships. And so I hope this was helpful, just to hear some different perspectives.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us on your own podcast.
Hey, glad to be a guest.
Cool.